Welcome to this new episode of codeLive, or I should say Agentforce Decoded. My name is Philippe Ozil. I'm a Developer Advocate, and I'm here today with you all for the next hour or so to talk about how to connect Cloud Code with Headless 360 using the Salesforce Hosted MCP servers. This is a topic I've covered very recently with blog posts, and there's more content coming up with it. And so the way we're going to do this is normally I don't have slides for such a session, but I want to maybe level set before we jump into the technical content. And I will show a couple slides just to make sure we're all on the same page about what is MCP, what is headless, and what we can do with it. And then I'll show you practically what we can expect to see when working with Salesforce Hosted MCP servers and Claude. All right, so without further ado, let me share my screen and jump into those slides. There we go. So let's actually go in presenter mode, will be nicer. Just a few slides. And first of all, I want to introduce a bit the concept of MCP and explain a bit why we need MCP when working with agents. So at first, when we introduced agents and we started thinking about extending basic prompting capabilities, we figured that we need to connect with data and services. And the way this could be done would be to reuse the good old APIs that we have everywhere. And I know Salesforce has quite a lot of them. The problem is that the more services you add, the more different API clients your agents need to load. And so when you have a lot of different services and a lot of different competing agents, whether it's Cloud Code, Anthropic agents, or OpenAI agents, and other tools, Grok, whatever, we have more API clients and more different API clients depending on the agents. So there's a proliferation issue, and we have also a problem with the lack of interoperability between those different agents. And generally, the responsibility to build these API clients belong to the owners of the data and services. So that doesn't really scale. So to deal with this, we've introduced the concept of MCP, Model Context Protocol, which acts as a decoupling mechanism. It's actually a standard that decouples the service APIs from the agents. So now you have your agents on one side, your data and services on the other side. And what you end up doing is that have the data and service owners build an MCP server, which in turn exposes tools and prompts to the different agents. And the missing bit here is that each agent is actually built with an MCP client, which is absolutely standard, and uses the standard MCP protocol to interoperate between different MCP servers, different APIs, different data and services. So that's the missing link. This is how MCP plays in this infrastructure. Now, enough talking about generalities, let's maybe focus more about where Salesforce fits in this architecture. So obviously Salesforce ships agents, but we also offers a number of data and services and APIs. So in the context of this particular session, we're going to work between third-party agents and data and services. So how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to use the Salesforce Hosted MCP servers. So we'll have an agent in this particular IS stream. We'll be talking about Cloud Code, but this same principles could be applied to any kind of agent. And this agent is shipping with an MCP client, which is totally generic. It's really not specific to Salesforce or to any other third party you may connect to. And on the Salesforce side, on the Salesforce platform side in particular, we have a range of hosted MCP servers. And these expose tools and prompts. And so what we'll be doing today is working on the link that lets us connect the MCP client that is part of Cloud Code with the Salesforce platform. Now, there are a number of things you can do when interacting between those two. And I want to show a bit a list of the capabilities that are available when you connect with Salesforce. Oops, looks like I lost my camera. All right, it's fine. Let me just hide it for now. And I think you don't need to see my face for this. So what we have here is a number of capabilities. You have, the standard servers that are hosted by Salesforce, and these include a number of capabilities. You have the basic S-object servers, where a number of them which expose S-object CRUD operations, so create, read, update, delete. There are actually multiple servers. So as you can see, there's a little S there. That's because we've broken down the different operations. And so depending on what you want to offer, whether it's full control or limited set of operations, you can decide which server to enable. So for example, there is an S object all, which grants all CRUD operations, or there are some more restrictive servers which only allow read access or maybe only updates. These are actually called mutations. And then there are other servers, like for example, the Tableau Next or Data 360 servers, which allow additional access to Salesforce platform components. Now, when you're working with those, you can access a number of operations, but maybe you need to do a bit more. So how do you do more than just this? Well, you actually build your own servers. And so in addition to the standard hosted servers, you can create custom servers to work with MCP on the Salesforce platform. Now, I'm only talking in this session about hosted MCP servers because in truth, you would also have the ability to create your own MCP servers. These wouldn't be called hosted because it would be your role to create them. Use an application like a SaaS like Heroku or even a local Node.js to host your own MCP servers. This is really beyond the scope of what we're doing. And so when you're working with hosted MCP servers on the platform, we have a number of options to create your own custom server, and you can create them with a number of tools and prompts. So let me list what is available, and during the session, we'll see actually practical examples of those, and we'll work with them. So what do we have? We have, in terms of tools, the ability to use Apex actions. So these are actually invocable actions that you can reuse. And the good news is that most of you already have a lot of invocable actions in your Salesforce orgs, because these are typically the things you connect into flows and also already in Agentforce agent actions. Then you have auto launch flow, same thing for these as for the agent actions. These are all generally part of your landscape. You also have custom Apex endpoints or enabled methods and named API queries. So these, I would say, are building blocks that you've already probably used in your Salesforce development in a variety of implementations. And the good news is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. All of these can be turned into plug-and-play material that you can expose to third-party agents. It's going to be more of your role to control what is available, what is not, and also put some, I would say, skills and instructions around what the agent should do with those. Finally, there's also another interesting thing that I think is probably going to be overlooked. That's the ability to create custom MCP prompts. Now, when you think about MCP, and probably a lot of people here in online know about what MCP is, but few of them know that MCP actually works on 3 elements. There's the most used feature, which is called tools, and that's what everybody is using nowadays. There are also resources and prompts. Now, we don't offer resources in terms of MCP services as part of Salesforce, but we do offer prompts, and for prompts, you can actually create MCP prompts through flex prompt templates. And what this does essentially is that it provides the ability to run pre-assembled prompts with parameters. So you can reuse your flex prompt templates and call them as part of a hosted MCP server. This is pretty easy to do, and I'll also show you that when we hit the demo. I saw there are already some questions, so let's see. Let's look at the chat. I already noticed when using subject-all doesn't show the delete tools, while documentation says it should have delete tools as well. So yes, normally subject-all offers deletion as part of the tools, and we'll get back to that. All right, so that's the theory about what's available, and now we're going to see a practical example of this. And to do this, I'm going to show you the key steps and what we need to do to work with those hosted MCP servers and Claude Code. So what we need to do to get started is, first of all, a Claude Code subscription. I'm going to use, in my case, a paid version of Claude Code. You can try this with the free Cloud Code, I think, the trial, but you will be very limited because it's going to be only support. I think it only supports a single tool and probably just a couple of prompts, not a long-running set of MCP tools and MCP callouts. So bear in mind, you probably need a paid for subscription, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or any other. Then on the Salesforce platform side, we need to do a couple of things to set this up. The first thing we'll need to do is to create an external client app. This will allow us to expose our services through OAuth so that the MCP client can connect to our Salesforce hosted MCP servers. And then we'll create a number of, we'll activate some standard MCP servers, and we'll also create a custom MCP server in which we'll add a number of tools that we're going to custom build just for this. Sounds simple enough? Well, let's get started then. All right, let me now switch over and close this. Enough slides for today. And let's focus on the actual content. So, all right, let me start first with a bit of an intro about our use case. For today's stream, we're going to work with Cloud, a good old Salesforce sample that my team produces. What Cloud Resorts is essentially is a business app that mimics the behavior of a seaside resort, which offers experiences like things about activities like zip line, jungle safari to their guests. And so as part of this, we have a number of activities that we can offer and different sessions that people can book and add to their schedule, depending on their interests. And so what we're going to do for today's as an experiment is to provide access to this set of operations, managing bookings, canceling, etc., without using the Salesforce user interface. So that is without connecting to Nine Experience. Now, of course, we'll need to do a bit of setup before we can do this, but in the end, you will have the same capabilities as through this user interface with just through using Cloud Code. Sorry, I'm struggling with this. It's always difficult for a non-native speaker. Anyways, so this is the theory. Now let's see how we need to apply all of this. Now, if you remember my slides, the first thing we need to do is to enable the connected app. So we're going to go into Salesforce Setup and create not a connected app, I should say, an external client app, because connected apps, as you probably know by now, are being retired. So instead of creating connected apps, which is a legacy way of doing this, we're going to create an external client app. So I'm going to type external from the setup menu search, and I'm going to look for the external client app manager. All right, so right now we're none, and I'm going to create a new external client app. So for the app name, I suggest you put something meaningful. And so that is how you would be creating something like, I would say, Claude MCP client. This is exactly what we're going to be doing. Or I should say, yeah, Claude MCP client. That's good. Then provide an email address. All right, that's just for the basic information. Just provide a name and an owner. The rest you can leave empty. We don't really need. The next part is going to be the more tricky part. That's going to be working with the OAuth settings. Now, when working with external client apps, there are a lot of options. Let me actually go full screen so that you can see it even better. I'll just hide my camera for now. And actually, let me really go totally full screen. There we go. So the thing we want to do now, we've filled up the basic information with our owner information. We want to enable OAuth, and that opens a whole lot of different settings. Now, the first thing we need to do under OAuth is to provide a callback URL. And there are a number of options here depending on which agent you're connecting to. This is the part that will vary a lot depending on which agent you're connecting to. In our case, we're going to work with Cloud Code, which is installed locally. So what I can do is go with HTTP, localhost, and then provide a port number. The port number doesn't matter much. It just needs to be unique, and also it should not be already taken by another piece of software. And then I forgot. Hold on, I'm looking at my notes because I forgot obviously what's after this. There's going to be a little something after this. Let me just quickly look back at my notes. So it's going to be just /callback. So localhost, then the port, random number port, but you need to make sure you have the same port both in here and later on your Cloud Code configuration, and then just call back. Easy enough. If you are using the online version, or if you don't want to use localhost for safety reasons in your external client type, you can also use the web domain cloud.ai, and you can configure your cloud desktop, for example, to connect, and then you can expose the same MCP servers from cloud desktop or cloud web and bring them as a bridge into your local environment if you don't want to use localhost. I know some people don't want this in their external client app. Now that we have set the callback URL, the next step is to work with our scopes. We need two scopes to connect with Cloud Code. We need, first of all, the perform request at any time, refresh token or online access. So I'm going to activate it. And the second one, which is also super important, is the MCP API access, the access Salesforce Hosted MCP Servers. And we only need those two. Now that we have those two, we can proceed. We have the right scopes, we have the right callback. The next step is to work more on the security and configuring the OAuth part. Nothing in flow, we can skip this part and we can move directly to security. So security, we're going to uncheck those two first options that require secrets for web server flow and for refresh token flow. We're going to keep the third one, the proof key for code exchange or PKCE. We keep it on. And then we're going to click the fifth one. We need JWT or JSON Web Token based access. All right. And that's all we need. We don't need to do anything else. So just quick recap on what we did. We filled up basic information with our external client app name. In this case, this is the Claude MCP client. You're free to pick any name that you want. We enabled OAuth, which exposed more settings. We picked up a callback URL, picked up a unique port on a localhost machine to connect with Cloud Code. Again, if you use another another agent, you probably have a different callback URL. We set up those two scopes, refresh token and the MCP API scope. And finally, we disabled those two security options, no secret required for web server flow or for refresh token flow. We kept the PKC option on, and we enabled the JSON Web Token JWT part. So at this point, I'm going to create the external client app. Now, note that if you do this also later on your own, there is a, I would say, a little latency. By the time you create an external client app or even a connected app, it will take up to 10 minutes to propagate. So if you try to run the configuration too fast, there's a good chance that it will fail. And that's simply because the external client app needs a bit of time to activate. So if it fails in the first run, your configuration may be fine. It's just a problem that the connected app or the external client app may not be ready in time. All right. So now that the app is ready, we will need some information. We will need the credentials for the external client app. So you're going to go into settings, and from there, you can go into OAuth settings, and we need to access the consumer key and consumer secret. So you're going to click this, and you'll have to do a little single sign-on there. I will get my email and get this verification code. All right, and then I'm going to click verify. Now, I'm not going to share my screen at this point, simply because if I do this, you will be able to see my credentials. So what I'm going to do next is that I'm just going to hide this thing for now, and I'm just going to show my face instead. And I will just copy those credentials safely. So let me stop sharing my screen, and there we go. So let me just quickly grab the credentials. There are two things that you get in the next dialog. Once you click this verify button, you get a consumer key and a consumer secret. Now, it's critical that you keep those always safe and you don't share them or don't put them in a GitHub repository, for example, because these allow access to your org. So again, be very careful. All right. So I've moved them aside. You want to keep them handy because we will need them later on when we work again with Claude. So this is the first step. We created the external client tab. Now we have the security part set up. And while the app is being set up and propagates online, we can now work on the next step. The next step is to enable our MCP servers. So you're still going to be in Salesforce setup. Go and type MCP. Look at MCP servers under API catalog. And from there's a second tab here called Salesforce Servers. And this is the one we want to get. Here you can find all the standard servers that are Salesforce hosted. And later on, we'll also be able to add our own by creating custom Salesforce MCP servers. So for example, for now, we can work with SObjectAll. And here you see there are a number of other servers that are available. So I'm going to pick the Salesforce SObjectAll, which is like the other servers. They're all disabled by default, and we're going to activate it. So I'm going to click SObjectAll. We get the server details. There are two things here and that you need to note. First, the name, API name of the server, which is something we'll need later on, and also the server URL. This is also something we'll need. Right now, oops, I clicked this. I shouldn't have clicked. Right now, this is a scratcher that I'm working on, so the server URL will be specific to sandbox here. If you're working in a production org, you'll have a different URL. You won't have the sandbox in here. So this is something that you'll have to adjust if you work between a production and a sandbox. You won't be using the same MCP server URLs. Now, before activating, you can already take a look at the tools and see what's available in there. And I agree with what was said earlier. I thought delete was in there, but it's actually not in there. So if you want to delete records, you'll need to activate an extra server. It's only those tools, so related records, basic SQL queries, also current user information, etc. Create, update. The delete is not in there. And my assumption is that the product team deemed that delete is pretty dangerous, so we didn't provide access there. So if you still want delete, you can still bring up the extra MCP servers. Now, these are the tools. You also have prompts, and these are really basic prompts that are, I would say, standard prompts. We won't be using them today, and instead I'll be showing you custom prompts. So now we're happy. Again, take note of the API name and the server URL of the tool, of the server, sorry, and then click activate. All right, nothing else. We can now go back to the list of MCP servers. I'm going to add another one for the demo. I'm also going to add the Salesforce API context, which is something that lets us explore the shape of objects. So you can explore the object metadata, look at fields, etc. So I'm going to activate this one as well. Same logic, take a look at the tools, prompts, etc. I'm just going to activate it right now, and we'll be adding it later on to Claude. So at this point, we have two standard MCP servers enabled, and we can, if we want really to delete S objects, we can also take a look and activate this one. I am not going to play with this just yet. I don't think, honestly, this is my take, my personal take. I don't think you should be allowing this one, the S object delete MCP server, simply because you probably want to be very restrictive about the way you're able to delete objects. And instead of granting a free ticket to delete any kind of record, you probably instead want to have some flows or apex that guide the user into what's acceptable and what's the process to delete records. All right, let's see, there are some other questions in there. Questions about security and governance. Who has access to control access to the org? So this is a good question. We mentioned we created an external client app, and the question is, how will we control security for this external client app? So right now what happens is that the way I've set up my external client app, we're going to later on have to authenticate between Claude and this external client app. And so what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be using our user privileges as the server access rights. So because I will be the user doing the authentication, clicking on approve, my user rights will be transferred to what's available in the external client app, and to what's internal in the end will be available to those MCP servers. So if I try, for example, to do operations on records that I don't have access to, these are going to be my own user access rights, which are going to be basically controlling what's available in those MCP servers. This is how it works. So unless you pick custom MCP servers and you work with, for example, Apex that has unlimited access because it's not using with sharing keywords, you're restricted to the current user access rights, not to anybody else. Right. So this is how security works, and this is answering the question that was in the chat there, how we can work and control access. Let me see if there are other questions before I continue. We won't be touching on skills in particular. I can briefly mention it, but we're just really going to focus more on MCP in the context of this session. Right. So before I go further into custom MCP servers, let's already give it a try and work with those two standard MCP servers, and let's finish the configuration. The third and final piece of the configuration that we covered, the external client tab, the MCP server activation. The third piece is to go into Claude and to add those servers. So to do this, I'm going to switch to my terminal, and the thing we need to do is before we launch Claude, we're going to use a number of operations in the terminal. So I'm going to do a Claude MCP list, and we're going to see the servers that are already in there. So for now, typo MCP list. We're going to see the different MCP servers that are available. Right now, I have two MCP servers which are completely unrelated to this stream, but I have one that helps me work with Google Workspace tools, and another one which is something internal at Salesforce. So you can see that my core cloud MCP servers are not yet registered. So I'm going to do the next step by adding a command. So that's going to be MCP Claude MCP add, and then I'm going to simply borrow the command from my blog post because it's a very long command. So, and I will comment out what's needed. So I'm going to paste it in here, and then we'll just adjust it. So this is the full command you'll need to do. It's let me also increase a bit more even the font size. Actually, let me clear everything. Let's type it again. Oop, no, I went too fast. Sorry. All right, let's do it again. Claude MCP add, that's the basic command, and then we have a number of flags. There's the transport flag, which is set to HTTP. Normally, you can have the MCP standard allows multiple formats for working with MCP servers. For the moment, Salesforce only supports the HTTP transport. You can have STDIO and other things, but for now, it's only HTTP. So this is always going to be HTTP for now. Then you have the name of the MCP server we're going to be adding. This one here is the subject all server. Now, the name of the server here doesn't need to match what's inside Salesforce. The other name in the Salesforce UI was, let me actually bring it in the back. It was actually subject all, and there's also another even name when you look at it. There's also a platform prefix. So we don't need exactly this name, but we do need something that is similar so that we can remember that this is the same. So in my case, what I did is I added a prefix Salesforce because I may be working with Google Cloud or whatever. So I kept the prefix. The next thing after that is the server URL. So this other parameter here is the server URL that we had in our configuration on the server setup page. Then there's the callback port. Remember, this is what we had in our external client tab. The port here needs to match what we have in our callback for the external client app. Then we have a field here, which I need to fill, which is the client ID. So this is something we get from the consumer key of the external client app. So I'm going to copy paste it because I kept my page open. And I'm going to paste it here. It always starts by free MV, and then there's a whole bunch of things behind it. This one is not as sensitive as the other field called consumer secret, so it's fine if I can share it with you. And then the next flag here is client secret. Now, the reason why we are not passing the client secret, or I should say the consumer key directly in here, is that the commands that you're typing in your terminal are saved in history. So you generally don't want to type anything sensitive in your terminal because it's going to be saved in the terminal history. So now that our command is ready, I just can press enter, and this is the part here where I need to copy the second credential from my external client app. That's called the consumer secret. So consumer secret is also the client secret. So I'm going to paste it now and press enter. All right. So at this point, we added the MCP server and it worked. So we can now move on. I will do the same thing directly. I'm going to repeat the operation with my other server, by the way, the server that is, let me actually bring it back. Close this, and where is it? Yes, I'm also going to add the second server that I configured, the API context server. So this time I'm going to just copy the URL. Oops. And then I'm going to go back here. So Claude MCP add transport HTTP, then the name of the server. So Salesforce, I'm keeping the same prefix. It's like API context. Then the URL of the server, and then the callback port. Same thing. We're using the same external client app for all of our MCP servers here. First, to simplify things, client ID, then I pass in my client ID. So let me copy it again. This is a bit manual, and we'll need to repeat this, of course, when we add also our own custom MCP server later. All right, then copy again the consumer key. All right, there we go. Cool. So we have now, if you go back and type again, call MCP list, we have our new servers in there. So we have the subject all, and you see that it needs the authentication. And same thing for the Salesforce API context. This one also needs authentication. Actually, it's written failed to connect, but it also needs authentication. So how do we provide authentication? So to do this, let me clear this. We're going to launch Claude. This time we're not doing it with, we're not running all of this with terminal commands. We're working directly within Claude. And so to configure and finish configuration of our MCP server, we're going to do /MCP. And this is going to provide us with the view of our different MCP servers. And we have right now 2 local MCP servers that are configured and are not ready yet. These 2. The others, forget about them. These are other tools we're not going to cover. I'm going to start first with the subject all. So I'm selecting it and I'm going to press enter on it. And the first thing I need to do is to authenticate. So I'm going to pick option 1, authenticate. This opens a browser window, and from there I'm going to need to authenticate. So I am just going to figure out what are my credentials, because I kind of forgotten what my credentials are for this org. Let me see. I'll try to see if I can find those credentials. Let's see, because I have too many orgs, probably like all of you online. So let me see. Where is my user? Bear with me as I'm looking for my username. Let's see. That is test. And now I've lost my login window. All right. Okay, cool. I need to log in for new user. Give me a sec. I need to generate a password because I didn't have a password for this particular user. So I'm just going to spin up a password for my scratch org. So give me a sec. I will actually let me bring. I need a terminal to do this, but I don't want you to see my password. So let me hide this. It's a bit of juggling around. I'll just use this. Let me move it to another monitor, and then I'll just run the command sf org pass generate and password. So this is a command that lets us generate a password for our user. So let me now share the authentication dialog. I hope it hasn't timed out. I may need to restart this because if you wait for too long, the authentication dialog will time out. So let me try to bring back the login screen, and I will also share it with you. There we go. So this is the dialog screen for the login. I'm going to see if it's still valid. So now that I have my credentials, let me paste them here. This is my username for my Scratch door. Oops. And I have the generated password. And there we go. And here. All right, try and log in. Let's see if it's still valid or if it has timed out. Yes. So this is good. This is perfect. What we see here is a dialog you'll see each time you connect to your external client app. Here you can see the name of your external client app, and below are the permissions that are requested by the app. So remember that when you're securing your access to your hosted MCP servers, the permissions from your current user here are the ones that are going to be passed to the external client app and are going to be the ones that are going to be applied to your hosted MCP servers. So I'm going to click allow now, and hopefully now we can go back to Claude. And let's see if it's set up correctly. Let's see, where's my Claude window? Authentication succeeded, perfect, we're in. So if I do a /MCP server again, you can see now that my S-object is connected and we have access to our 9 tools. All right, perfect. Let's see if we can make the API context tool work as well. So I'm going to do this. And let's see, try to reconnect. Aha. Grant type not supported. Okay, that's interesting. I think I messed up when I configured it, so I'll probably need to reset it. Let me just, I'm going to remove this server and I'm going to try to add it again. So to remove the server, you just go and type Claude MCP remove and the name of the server, which is in this case Salesforce API context, and then I can try to add it again. So right, let me maybe quickly rework on the CLI command to add this server. I'm going to prepare it again, but this time I'm going to be working on a different note so that I can add it again. So copy again the URL of the server here. Prepared. API, oops, context, callback report, client ID. All right, let me paste my client ID and then I can show you the configuration I've prepared. Let's see. All right, cool. All right, let's see. Let me try again. Clearing everything. This here would be the command that I need to type to add the other MCP server. Again, same thing. Transport is HTTP, the name of the new server, Salesforce API context, the URL, which I probably mistyped the first time I tried to do this. The callback port still the same, but matching our external client app, the client ID, which is a consumer key from our external client app, and then client secret, which I'm going to type next. Copy it in here. There we go. And here we go. Cool. So it's added. Let's go back in Claude now. Check our /MCP to go and check the list of MCP servers. This one looks better now. Instead of fail to connect, it needs re-authentication. So that's good. So I'm going to select it. And then I'm going to authenticate. This opens again the dialog we just had before. And let me actually share it with you so that you can see. Let me bring it up to the right screen. Oops. Where did it go? Too many screens. Yes, that's the one. And then, yeah, I'm going to log in with my username in there. All right, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, I still have it handy. Good. That's my username. Actually, this time I'll be smart. I'll ask it to remember me. And the generated password for my Scratch org. There we go. Cool. Now we can log in. We'll also have to approve again the connection. Oh, actually, no, it's already approved, so it's fine. We no longer see the external client app approval dialog because we already accepted it before. Cool. So let's go back to Claude. And there we go. Oops. Looks like, it's still, let's see. Oh, okay. It didn't work. Let me try again. I'm going to retry my luck. And invalid code verify. Okay. I guess I messed up. Maybe one last try. Maybe I used the wrong credentials. So let me try again with retyping the credentials of my user. Password here and the username. So you can see it, but I'm typing in the login dialog right now. And let's see. I hope I haven't pasted anything wrong in there. All right, see, login to sandbox, and all right, authentication succeeded, and yes. All right, perfect. Now we have our two MCP servers ready. Let's just try to see /MCP again, and yes, perfect. We can see our two MCP servers, the two standard ones, the API context with 6 tools, and the Salesforce object all with 9 tools. Now, if you want at this point, look at the different tools. You can select the server, and you can click View Tools to look at the different tools that are in there. These should be a mirror of what we have on the Salesforce side. Cool. Now, there's a question in the chat, which actually is very interesting. What are the Salesforce side cost consumptions when using those MCP servers? Well, there's no specific cost related to the use of MCP. The cost is just the underlying API usage that is behind those MCP servers. Nothing specific to AI, I would say. All right, let me also check for LinkedIn comments because I haven't been paying attention there. So I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody on LinkedIn. No, okay, no specific question at the moment, but do feel free to post your questions in both YouTube and LinkedIn. If you have questions, I'll try my best to answer to those. Cool, so we have our two MCP servers ready. I'm going to go back now to the root of Claude, and then we can start asking questions. Like, for example, what are the available experience types in Core Cloud? Let's see if it's smart enough to figure out that this is my Salesforce org. I may need to be more specific because what you would have here is probably the need to add some skills. And there was a question about this in the chat. You would add specifically some structures about what your service is about, what your company is about, what are the possible options. But here, I think I did a pretty good job. Actually, it's kind of cheating. It's cheating because what it did here, it didn't even call the MCP server. It looked at the project metadata because right now my Claude code is connected to my Salesforce DX project. So it actually, instead of calling the MCP server, it looked at the local MCP, the local metadata. So my question was not exactly the right one. I'm going to ask more about bookings, something that is not in my local project and that is only in my Salesforce org. Show me the bookings for this week. So this is data that is only in my Salesforce org. It's not in my local project. So the agent should be smart enough now to figure out that it needs to call my SObject MCP tool to load those bookings. Let's see. Yes, and you can see here it already found that it needs to use the MCP server. And when you do this and add skills, which are basically reusable instructions for the agent, you can get even faster results because right now I'm exploring the project without a lot of guidance. It's going to work, but the results are going to be less reliable if I don't use skills. We can do things even better if we use skills on top of this. So let's just wait for a second and see results. We called it a number of times to get a summary of the bookings, and then we should see those come up quickly. There we go. We have a summary of our bookings. with a lot more data than I asked for, but it's fine. Some metrics. So that's already a good thing we can do now. Reading data is very easy now. I want to show you something a bit more advanced. I want to show you how we can extend those MCP servers. And so let's go ahead and now go into the fun part of building custom MCP servers. Building custom MCP servers is super easy. What you need is just to connect the dots. So if you go back to the list of MCP servers in here, you have those standard MCP servers plus this button here that lets you create new MCP servers. So I'm going to create a new server. I'm going to use the same name in conventional, Claude, just Core Cloud, that's going to be fine. Custom MCP server for Core Cloud. Oops. Operations. Cool. It's just very random name, but anyways. And then from there, it creates the MCP server. So here you already have enough information to start adding it to Claude Code. But what you want to do next is actually to add some tools and prompts. So you're going to go in the Tools tab here, and there you can start adding server assets. So here, for example, I can add some tools. I'm going to be able to pick, again, a list of things, so Apex Actions, Apex REST, or Enable Flow, and also not listed here, but also name query APIs as well. So let's say for now, I'm going to pick what do I have actually? Cancel. No, I don't know what I have. Let me say maybe flows. I think I have flows to, for example, to cancel a booking. I can try this. Or flow to create a booking. That would be nice. So I already have this flow defined because I'm using it in my org. And so what I can do is simply just add it to the server. So I'm going to add this one, the ability to create a booking, but also to cancel a booking. So I'm going to add both here. And that should be good enough. So I have two tools that I've added. Let me click done and see that we have our two tools added to our server, the cancel booking and the create booking flows. Next, I'm also going to add a prompt just to show you how to do this. So to add prompts, you go into add server assets and you can add prompts. This works for the flex prompt template. So here you would only see the flex prompt template, and the one I think that will work well is the generate personalized schedule. That's a basic prompt that's looking at the current customer and helps us to generate a personalized schedule based on the available activities and the user interests. So I'm going to add this one, click done, and let's go. All right, so we have two tools and one prompt in our server. I am going to copy the URL of our server and click activate. And then we'll head out to Claude Code to configure it. So let me prepare on the side the configuration command to add this particular server. Bear with me a second. All right, cool. All right, let me head back to my terminal. I'm going to quit Claude because we need to run the command to add the MCP server. I've prepared the command on the side, so let me just paste it here and comment what I have. So what I did here was to provide this custom name, Salesforce Coral Cloud. That's the name that I decided to use for my custom MCP server. Then the URL here, you can see it's ending with /custom with the name of my MCP server that I defined, and also sandbox because I'm on the sandbox. The rest are the same parameters as you saw earlier. So let me go ahead and press enter. I'm also reusing the external client tab as well. So same secrets everywhere. Now let me bring up the consumer secret in there and adding it. Cool. All right. So always, I'm going to skip the check for the MCP server. I'm just going to actually activate it. So I'm going back to Claude. And I'm going to activate the new MCP server. Here you see that we have our new Coral Cloud MCP server, which needs authentication. So same thing, I'm going to select it and hit authenticate. It opens the browser dialog for authenticating. This time I have saved my user logins, so I can quickly do this and accept. And now in a second, we should be able to accept this. There we go. So we are connected to our Coral Cloud MCP server. Let's double check that we have indeed the right tools. So I'm going to go again, /MCP, inspect the Coral Cloud custom MCP server. We can see 2 tools in there. Now, one thing that I noticed, and this is probably due to the version of Cloud Code, you don't see the prompt in there. The prompt is available, so our Flex prompt template is actually loaded in there, but for some reason, they're not displaying it in their user interface. And I think they're still super valuable, but you cannot see them here. So here, let's try to use, actually, this one may be a bit complicated. I don't know if we're going to be able to use this one, but yeah, let me do something simple. The create booking may be a bit difficult to use because it's a complex input parameter of an array, so I would probably need a bit more descriptions and skills to use it. What I'm going to try next is probably the cancel one. This one should be very easy to use because it's just, I think, the name of, let's see, actually, let me open the flow. It's going to be even easier. Let's see what's the cancel booking about. So obviously here a skill would be pretty handy because you could document what the flow is doing. So let's see what the cancel booking does. Cancel booking flow, that's the one that I exposed. Let's see, what are the parameters? For the input, I guess it's looking at a booking ID and a cancellation reason. All right, so let's try this. I'm going to try to call it without making any changes. First of all, I probably need a user with a booking. So let me go back into my contacts. Sophia had no upcoming bookings. So let me add in a booking for her, and then we're going to cancel it. So let's see. For a session, let's say we need to look at an experience session. So let me just grab one of those sessions. Let's see, this one, for example, and yeah, okay, perfect. I'm picking a session that exists. All right, and I'm going to book Sophia on this one. All right, so we have an upcoming booking. All right, upcoming booking, perfect. Snorkel adventure, and it's just Sophia. And all right, save. Cool. Now we have an upcoming booking. We have the booking here, and we're going to be able to try to cancel it with our MCP tool. So the flow that I've used is not super user-friendly in the sense that it's directly calling for the user ID here. So let me actually write a prompt to ask for the server ID, so the user ID. So, all right. Normally, this would all be solved with skill. So, right, I would just ask the so the user ID of my user first. And if we had a skill, we could automate all of this to first fetch the user ID, and then we can work on the cancellation. So in this case, we can chain multiple MCP calls, and with a skill, this would be a bit more transparent for the end user. We wouldn't be typing all these commands. Okay, so I've requested the user ID, so I have it here. Now, cool, I have the email. Now cancel her upcoming booking. Now I'm going to try it this way without specifying anything. The agent has the tool available. It has the description of the parameters, and hopefully with the contact ID, it should be able to find the upcoming booking and then call the flow to cancel the MCP tool, and then the flow, of course, to cancel the upcoming booking. Let's see if it is able to do all of this. Again, it may fail on the first attempt. Maybe we need to help it a bit and nudge it to go in the right direction. But normally, with the skill, again, you could have a more defined process to do all of this. Cool. So it found the booking. And then it's going to call, yeah, here it's asking me for a confirmation to use the flow. It found out the structure of the parameters. Here, that's the structure of the parameters for calling the cancel booking flow. And right now, looking good so far. So I'm going to approve. Now, there is something you'll see for every MCP tool you're calling that is potentially destructive. You will have to your users will be prompted whether to automatically run them without confirmation or not. So I recommend that you always validate those potentially destructive operations manually. So here I'm going to accept it, and we're going to see Claude is going to call this MCP tool to cancel our booking. Let's see. Cool, booking has been marked as canceled. Let's now go back to our Salesforce org, and if everything goes well, let me open it inside, and then let me just refresh this view here. And normally we have no upcoming booking for Sophia at this point. Maybe it didn't work. Let's see. Or, oh no, actually it's still in there, but you know what? I think we have a flag called is canceled. It hasn't been canceled. So I guess the agent messed up. Let's see. Let's go back here. Booking number 1685. Okay. That's the one. Yep. And yep, booking has been marked as canceled by the system. Well, I guess it didn't work exactly the way it was supposed to. Maybe the flow failed. I don't know. But I mean, I guess you understand the concept. I would probably need to tweak my flow. Let's see. This Sophia upcoming bookings. I'm a bit surprised that this didn't work this time. I already did this in the past and it worked well, so I'm pretty surprised. It called the flow. Maybe something was wrong with the... Well, I guess the flow call failed. So I would need probably to look at my logs and see why the flow failed. And I would assume that we probably messed up the way we were calling the parameters for canceling the flow. So I probably should have given more detailed instructions into how to pass the variables, the input variables. Again, that would be more documentation on the flow side and also probably additional documentation with a skill. So that's how you'd use flow. Sorry, it didn't work. That's normally the way it happens. Next thing I want to show you before we close this session and answer more questions is running prompts, custom prompts through the custom MCP servers. So remember, on our server, we have configured a prompt to generate personalized schedule. Now, if I go back, if I go back to my users, Philippe Rodriguez, we have written down some interest in here. And these are actually not showing up here. These are matching to some experience types. And so by using our pre-registered prompt here called, let me show you, generate personalized experience, we're going to be able to propose a number of experiences. So I'm going to show you the prompt first, and then I'm going to call the MCP tool to generate it. So we have our our flex prompt template for generate personalized schedule. So what this does essentially is takes the input contact and then calls some apex to generate a list of available sessions for today, matching the interests of the current user. Right. So let's try to call this prompt in Claude now. So going back to Claude, and here prompts instead of MCP to the difference of MCP tools are called directly with a slash. So I'm going to do slash, and here I have, if I start typing generate, you can see here the first search result here is my custom MCP prompt, which in turn is our flex template. So I'm going to hit enter on this one, and then we have the parameters that follow. So the contact ID here is Sophia's contact ID. I can just scroll up and provide it. Of course, in a real world scenario, you probably pick something a bit more friendly than just an ID. You can probably use a contact name, but for us, this will work. So here, if I do this, This calls my flex prompt template by passing the parameter, and we should be seeing in response the result of our MCP, of our custom prompts. Let's see. Just wait for a second. And there we go. We have a list of suggestions brought to us back from Salesforce. So these here are not something that Claude fetched. This is actually happening on the Salesforce side using our prompt template. You can see that we retrieved the customer preferences. That was Sophia's preferences in here. And then we did a search using directly the platform to look at the available activities that match those types that are happening today, and that would work. Now, something that is really nice is when you combine those pre-made prompts with additional MCP tool calls, and you have a lot of flexibility here. So that's it in a nutshell. That's all I wanted to show you for today. I'm going to be taking questions now. We saw, just as a recap, we saw how to configure Cloud Code to work with Salesforce Hosted MCP Servers. We saw how to create the external client tab, how to activate the Salesforce servers. We saw then how to connect those MCP servers to Cloud. We saw then after how to create our own custom MCP server to call flows. We saw we can also call Apex, and we also ended up showing how to call a flex prompt template as part of our custom server. All right, that's all for the demo. Let me see now, again, if there are any questions, do feel free to write those questions in the chat. We can stay a couple more minutes to get your questions answered. All right. So the question is, I have one question right now, and feel free to add more. How are custom MCP servers added to custom application agents? Where user login? Oh yeah, how do you work with Salesforce Hosted MCP servers when users are not involved through login? You can actually change the authentication flow to use a principal user. So for example, an integration user and the external client tab to control access policies. That would be one way of doing this. So this would be a way to grant a shared set of access. Let's see, what else do we have? How can we expose metadata? So that's a good question. So you can actually expose metadata by calling the, oops, my camera is restarting. Let's see. Try to bring my face back up because we no longer really need the screen here. All right. So there we go. Cool. I was saying, yes, you can access the metadata of your servers by calling the the context MCP server. So if you were to go back in MCP, you can actually, since we configured the API context MCP server, this one here, we have access to tools that let us explore metadata for objects. So for example, I can ask my agent, like, what are the custom fields on the contact object? So actually, yeah, I can try this. Now, the thing is, in my particular example here, I'm already connected. I'm working in the scope of my Salesforce DX project, so it will probably look at my local project. But normally, actually, yeah, it's looking at my local project, so it's not gonna be the best. But that's the way you would work. You would work with Salesforce API context MCP server to explore the metadata from the objects. And this could be interesting because you can also explore related lists, you can explore some constraints, etc. Another question. Understand using MCP servers will not consume AI tokens. Actually, so yes and no. We do use AI tokens when we call flex prompt templates. In this case, yes, we would be consuming tokens, but we just use the MCP servers, especially the ones working with S objects. We don't consume any flex credits on the Salesforce side. Let me see other questions coming up. I don't want to forget people also on LinkedIn as well. I was looking too much at YouTube. Let's see. From a security perspective, what are the risks and considerations for using the S-Object-All server? So the risk is that when you expose too many objects with S-Object-All is that you may be happening in some scenarios when people can query information and make changes to these objects in ways that you haven't anticipated. So I think that S-Object-All is very good for doing a lot of prototype, but when you're working in a more production environment, you probably want to select only a handful of operations with flows and property apex actions to really restrict what is available. Now, remember that it's safe from a security perspective to use those MCP servers because the end user will have the same access rights as the user who accepted the connection with the external client app. However, you probably don't want to offer any kind of SOCL query to the end users. You probably want to restrict what they can search for. But again, they will only have access to the records that are available in the permission scopes. And so skills, again, yes, another question about skills. Skills weren't included in this particular workshop, not a workshop, a live stream, but you have the ability to load Salesforce skills and to build custom skills for Cloud Code or for any other MCP servers, and these are a great supplement to working with MCP servers. We're going to be a bit short on time to cover these today, but I really recommend you read the upcoming blog post we have that explains how to add Salesforce skills to Cloud Code. Another questions here. Not sure, but if we have a custom MCP server, can we expose these with tool schemas? Yes. Sorry. Yes, so that's something I did not share. Let me actually show it very quickly. When you're building custom MCP servers, actually it's here. Do I still have it? No, let me go back to my custom MCP server. So your custom MCP server is something you can start from scratch like I did. But for example, if I were to go back in my core cloud server, you can also pick tools from the existing MCP servers. So when you, let me first deactivate my server so that I can modify it, you can add server assets that are also from other servers. That's the third option. I did not comment on this one when I shared, but you can reuse existing tools. So for example, if you want to have metadata information from the API context server, for example, you can pick tools from these standard MCP servers and add them to your custom MCP server. This is how you can reuse existing things. So here, for example, if I wanted to say search metadata type, I can add it to my custom MCP server, and it goes along with my custom tools. I have also the standard tool loaded in now, search, and then I can activate again my server. If you modify, by the way, if you have to modify the MCP server definition, you probably will need to reconnect on the Cloud side. And yes, what we shared today was how to connect with Cloud Code, but you can use those Salesforce hosted MCP servers anywhere else. Remember that MCP is a standard, so you can use it in Microsoft Copilots, in ChatGPT, any kind of agent, as long as it supports the MCP protocol. There is nothing Salesforce specific in the implementation here. Another question here in the chat, which is very interesting. Can we rate limit the number of tool calls for a particular user in Salesforce? Not at the moment, not within the current implementation. If you are using MuleSoft with Omni Gateway, yes, you can probably do something like this. But for now, the Salesforce hosted MCP servers do not offer rate limit features. You'll probably be rate limited by API consumption, but that's definitely not the same thing as some rate limits. Let's see, there are plenty of questions. I'm going to try to continue. Why do we need the API context MCP server when we have the get S-object schema tool in S-object-all? Well, I added it here as an example, but you can mix and match different tools. There are probably some different things. Like, for example, I think S-object-all does not have the ability to look at properly related list. Let me see. I don't know the tool definition by heart, I must admit. So there's probably going to be some differences. Here, well, these tools here are more working for records. They're not so much looking at metadata, really. There's a get object schema, yes, but you may not have things, I don't know, like maybe the record types, I don't know. There might be some differences, but if you want to have really the answer, you probably need to expand the list of the tool features and compare them. Generally, I would say the metadata expert tool and the APIs context tool are generally more used on the development side rather than the production side. So here, for the example I shared with Coral Cloud, they're probably more we'll probably be using more the S-Object and our custom server rather than the S-Object API context. You generally don't need that much metadata in the way you work. All right. What else? I see plenty more questions. So, server or AI agnostic, meaning that conceptually we should be able to use the server for any other AI. Yes, correct. MCP server. Yes. Again, let me reinforce this message. The MCP tools are absolutely agnostic from the clients. As we saw in the beginning, you can really work with any kind of agents because the MCP is a standard that helps us to decouple the agent from the actual service that it is calling. So in our case, it means that you can connect Claude, Microsoft Copilot, any other agent to the Salesforce Hosted MCP service. All right. And yes, another question again on skills. So skills are coming up very quickly. I know the community has posted some things, and thanks, Nathan, for sharing. We have a blog post that is being written right now by my colleague Akshara Sawant, who probably will be live in the next couple of days or weeks. So it's coming up very quickly. It's, in fact, very simple to work with skills, just a bunch of CLI commands to load them. And you can start already with the set of Salesforce development skills that Nathan mentioned in the chat. That's a good start, the SF skills on the force.com repository. All right, I think I've answered most of the questions, so I'm going to have to call it a day here. Thank you again so much for joining, and make sure you sign up for the next Agentforce Now codeLive. It was a real pleasure to have you all, and thank you so much. See you in the next one. Bye for now.